Hello and welcome to my plugin demonstration and tutorial for my new plugin Asset Zoo Maker. Now, Asset Zoo Maker is mainly just geared for other developers that are creating environmental asset packs, and obviously it's required that you have an asset zoo or an asset overview that lays out all of your meshes for the buyer to see. Once they purchase your pack and open it up, there's always an overview, and then you have your demonstration map. So when you have lots of meshes in your environmental asset pack, it could take a long time to make your asset zoo. Having to bring in the meshes one by one, group them together, sort from largest to smallest. It could take time, and I don't know about you, but I like to get my plugins out the door and get moving on to the next priority. So I created a plugin here for Asset Zoo Maker, and so obviously step one, just make sure that it is installed and ready to go, and verify by going into your project settings. And then all the way down at the bottom, you should see Asset Zoo Maker with these default settings just like this. Now, all you have to do, the prerequisite to using this plugin, is to make a blank level. Unfortunately, that is a manual step, but that's okay. Make your level where you want it to be. Normally, you name this, asset overview, or whatever it is that you're calling it in your environment map here. So create the level and enter the level. So you can see here, I am inside of the level. If you are not in the level and you generate the asset zoo, it's going to generate right on top of your polish level or your main menu level. So you got to make sure that you are inside of the level that you want the zoo to be developed in. So with everything just set to default, let's go ahead and generate a level. We'll go down to Tools, Asset Zoo Maker, and now you have these options here. Create Asset Zoo will do just that. It will go through your entire content folder, gather up every static mesh that it can possibly find. It will calculate its bounds, and it will lay everything out from biggest to smallest. Personally, I like using this one. Now, if you have your own lighting set up, cool. Go for Create Asset Zoo. If you don't want to bother with all the lighting and all the prerequisite stuff that you need to do, all you have to do is hit Create Asset Zoo plus lighting. Now, one thing I will show, just to get started here, I have erased all of my custom settings that I had here. So this, purposely, I want this to be kind of messy here. We have, to demonstrate, I have the largest pack that I own, which is the Abandoned Airport, which has hundreds and hundreds of meshes. So this will be a good way to show the power behind this plugin here. So let's just go ahead and do the Asset Zoo. Let's see what happens. Create Asset Zoo plus lighting. And it will you will get a warning in case you accidentally hit that and, oh, come to find out I'm not in the right level. It's just going to ask you, are you ready? Do you want to add this to the current level? Yes. Hit OK. And just like that, it took a split second, and there are 677 actors in here. And you can see, if I go to the lighting folder, it added the directional light, post-process volume, sky atmosphere, and skylight, all already tweaked to basically like Epic's, basic lighting setup. So this should work, but again, you are free to go through and change whatever you need to change. So what this has done is gathered the largest meshes, and it goes shelf style, so it's got specific padding per row that it's trying to make, but as far as the shelf style, it's going to cram everything side by side until it is out of width room. And then it moves on to the next, and so on and so forth, all the way down here. Now, you've got these weird, big, blocky meshes here. and it's even causing some weird spacing. There's no telling what some of these were for. And you know what? A lot of times, some of these extra light blockers and these extra meshes you really don't need. So there is an easy way to get rid of them. So if I could just shift click some of these big old meshes that's like, I really don't need to show that. These are just fillers for the demo level. Like all these little stripes here. We can get rid of those. So what we'll do is right click. And when you right click any mesh in the level, you're going to see an asset zoo maker pop out. So we have not defined any groups or anything yet, but we do have always at the top here, omit from zoo. So now when I click that and regenerate, those objects will not be in the zoo. Now if I change my mind, oh wait, I need those, it is stored inside of the project. The saved folder will create some info about each asset, and it will look to see, oh, yep, this is added to the omit list, and you can obviously re-add it whenever you need to. So, but we will keep those omitted. I'm actually gonna grab these as well and omit. And then now we can just right click anywhere, or you can even do it in here too, by the way. Right click, asset zoo maker, omit. I believe my recording is cutting it off, sorry, but there is a little window. It's the same window. So you can do it either from the outliner or from the level itself. So I'll just right click, asset zoo maker, regenerate current zoo, asset zoo. So there we go. Things are starting to look a little tighter. But let's define a little bit more with these. Let's get rid of these. We will omit those and regenerate. Starting to look better. This piece here doesn't have a texture. Let's, I'm going to say maybe that's a filler piece as well. Or you can manually move it around, whatever you want to do. But just for quick tightening up, for some of these pieces we don't need, I just wanted to get rid of them, and you will see that the plane automatically stretches and sizes to whatever you have going on here. And there's padding, which you can control in the project settings as well. So let's break this down a little bit more. We've got a lot of pieces in this project. So let's see what else we can do. So let's go to project settings. And we have use grouping, which is the big one here. So if we click this, you get a lot more options now. Preferably, I would say use grouping, because you also get your group labels. So not everything is just smashed down one plane. So if we go, let's create some groups. Let's create a props. And let's do a modular, and let's go with, we could do a small modular. So you got the big outside modular pieces, and then the smaller modular pieces. And then let's do some foliage. Now you will see each of the row padding has a default of 250 centimeters. I felt like this, you'll see the 250 used a lot. I felt like it was just a good happy number, a good in between for the row padding, so the pieces are not too close together from row to row. But obviously you can come in here and customize however you want per group, which is nice. When group is off, then you can come down here and you see it's grayed out because use grouping is turned on. But you also have row padding for the ungrouped that you can modify as well. But with grouping turned off, this global row padding is disabled. And then now we have a little bit more control over each group. Now at first, we haven't assigned anything to groups. So if I regenerate, you see it's not really doing anything other than it added a text render actor called ungrouped, because we have not grouped anything together. So let's make this quick here. These are all going to be props. Let's browse to the asset here. Yeah, some shop items. Let's just shift click through all of them. Now we can right click and we assign them all to props. And it looks like there's some others. Actually, if we go to interior and just turn on, we'll do static mesh. I believe these should be all of the props. Yep. So we'll grab all of these and assign them all to props. Then we have our exterior. These all actually look like props as well. So I'll just go ahead and just make them all props. We have some trash. Trash is obviously props as well. And you can see how quick you can get these objects assigned in here to where they need to be. So here are the structural pieces. Here's interior. So maybe the interior pieces will add them to small modular. The exterior, these look like larger pieces, and we'll just add them to modular. We've got a single cable that could go under prop, and then for buildings, let's just make all these, we'll assign these to modular. And let's see where that gets us. Now, I've been right-clicking and hitting regenerate right there. Or you can go up to Tools, Asset Zoo Maker, Regenerate Current Asset Zoo. You can go that route. Or at the bottom here of your settings, you have a hotkey. And I have already assigned it as a default of Control-Shift-R for Regenerate. And obviously you can change this to whatever you need. So let me hit Control-Shift-R. And now the plane moved around, and now here we are. We've got modular. We have our props. We have our small modular. And then we have the remaining ungrouped that we have not added yet. So at least the ungrouped will let you know, hey, you have not assigned any of these yet. This looks like it is a part of the level prototyping pack. So let's say, you know what, that's a different pack that I'm using for other things. I do not need those. So we can omit those. Here are a lot of little modular pieces that must have been, oh, it's in the demo scene. So being in the demo scene, we'll just move these to, I could be wrong, but we'll do small modular. Again, it's kind of hard to tell the scale when you are looking at the small thumbnails, but this will be modular for sure. And then let's do another regeneration. So now things are moving in a lot tighter. We have some that do not belong in small modular. Again, it was kind of hard to tell. Actually, all of these pieces could move over to modular. And then we'll regenerate. So things are starting to tighten up a little bit. And again, I mean, if these are demo pieces, just for the demo, you know, you don't need them in here. Maybe we'll just omit those. Same with this. That looks like that's a light blocker. So we will omit that. Control-Shift-R. There. Now things are starting to move in a little bit more and more. So this is a massive, massive asset pack. So it'll definitely take a little bit more finagling with the groups to figure out what works where. I'll omit that as well. Maybe all these just for funsies, just so for the sake of the length of the video. Go ahead, just omit those. Control-Shift-R. Okay, now things are looking a little tighter. Obviously we have lots of props, but imagine having to lay out all of these props manually. You no longer have to do that. Oh, we forgot to assign the foliage here. So let's go through here. It's like, yep. Now, obviously this can only do static meshes. These dark greens are a foliage preset, so those don't work. But Asset Zoo Maker, foliage. And again, I can right click out here, but it's just easier to quickly shift click and Control Shift R. There we go. Now they're attached to a foliage area. The last ungroup looks like they went into my the MetaHuman folder and found the static meshes to some of the hair. So not worried about those. We can omit those. So now let's go through the rest of the settings. Now that we have the grouping figured out, here's where things, there's some things we can tweak to make things look a little better. Now, as far as props goes, I'm pretty happy with that. But maybe we don't want as much spacing. So let's go to the props area and let's just set this to 0 to default spacing, or the more of the engine default spacing, Control Shift R. And you can see here it really crunched things together, but it's all still spaced out. So for props, this might be perfect for what you're looking for, or it might be a little too tight. Let's go to like 150. Control Shift R. There we go, a little bit more spread out. Now then we have these big boys here, these massive modular pieces, and there's going to be some issues here because it's gathering the bounding box mass of the part, but there's also a little bit of relying still on your pivot rotation. So you can see everything is going along the y-axis, but if you happen to make a mesh that is not stretching along the y-axis, then you're going to get an issue like this, where this one piece is causing way too much space, or even these pieces, same thing, a little too much space. We can tighten that up. So with the individual rows, you can come down to modular, and I have right here auto rotate for packing. And what this is going to do is ignore your pivot and look at your X scale versus your Y scale to figure out which direction is longer. If your X scale is longer, it's going to automatically rotate the piece 90 degrees so that it packs in better. So let's go to modular and we will check that box, and let's do another regen. That looks 10 times better on these larger pieces. Everything is squeezed together much tighter, looks much better. But the downside is if you have little modular wall pieces, you're gonna, it kind of looks like a hardware store. You're going to get them really trying to squeeze together as tight as they can. My advice to that is to put these in a separate group. Maybe, well, these obviously do belong in, they're small enough. I would say these belong in the small modular. Kind of go down the list here. Just want to see if we can, actually I think most of these pieces might be small. So let's just toss them into small modular. See how much better that looks. There we go. So that moves some things. Well, you can see I did not look at the right area, or look at the meshes correctly in the thumbnail. It's really hard to tell. But let's put those back in modular. And again, so you can see how it works, just kind of flip-flopping back and forth. There we go. And just trying to get everything to look right and to seat right, but again, you're not having to lay all of this out manually. So, moving on down, we've gone over all those. Parent actors to group label. This is on by default, but if you don't want it, you can set it false. What this does is it parents, if I come over here, come to, like, if I click props, you'll see this text render actor, and all of the props items, or all the items that go along with this group, have now been parented underneath the text render actor. So it's not a group to where when you click on something, it highlights the whole group. That can be frustrating. But what this does is it parents to just the group label, so that now if I'm like, hey, you know what, I want this foliage, I know this is all in alphabetical order, but I actually want this over here at the end. You can now just grab the text render actor and it will just move everything around for you, no matter the size. There's all the props. But the great thing about this is that you can still come in here and manually rotate things, do what you need to do in here, and then, move things around if you need to. If you don't want any labels at all, just simply click this spawn group labels. But I would advise to probably have labels on, just so buyers know what they are. Separate nanite meshes. You might have a whole set. I've seen some packs where you have literal duplicates. You have like a low poly of all the props, and then you have a high poly nanite version of the exact same props in a separate folder. And let's say you want to keep those separate. Well, by all means, just check this box. The plugin will read the information about the asset to see if nanite is enabled. If it is, check that box and just regenerate. Now you will see that the props without nanite are in their own group, and then the props with nanite are also still in a props group, but now you can see this nanite title that has been added to it. And just for proofing here, we can go to nanite and we'll just do triangles. And there we are. Here's the nanite meshes. So it looks like all of the outer modular pieces were set to nanite. Small modular, same thing. There's some are not nanite and some are. And that's a great way to separate them if needed. So let's move on down. Group padding. This is how much padding per whole group. So for now, this is set again to 250. Let me do a quick regen without the nanite. And it's the padding between groups like this. So if I were to set this to 1,000 and do a regen, you can see now the groups are spread out between each other a little bit further. But that's also a lot of space. So if you don't want that space, that 250 sweet spot seems to do it. Mesh alignment, bounding box center by default. I would advise to always use bounding box center, but if you have something particular you're doing with your meshes, maybe for a separate display, and you really want the alignment to be focused on pivot point, then by all means switch over to pivot point. All this is doing is you have some of these where the pivot point is completely centered. Then you have some where your pivot point, like this guy here, is actually completely off center and just kind of there at the bottom. And then you have this guy where the pivot point is in the corner. Then you have this one where the pivot point is dead bottom center. So you have a lot of variations of pivot points. So if you were to switch that to pivot point mode, things can look real wonky due to all the different pivot point locations. So it is best to just do the bounding box center, and that will keep things nice and even in the rows and not look so messy. But it is there if you need to change that. Your ground plane padding, this is for the side spacing and the front spacing. So feel free to adjust these if you want more or less spacing, whatever you need there. Set Z offset. If we have this set to 0, which is basically the issue I was having before I added that option, Control-Shift-R. If you have any ground planes, like modular ground planes, well, now you're going to have some Z fighting because it's just a flat plane sitting on top of another flat plane. So by default, I just have it bumping up by 1 little centimeter, and that keeps the Z fighting from happening. Let's see, we've regened, no more Z fighting. And if we zoom way, way, way in, you will see that slight 1 centimeter bump, and you can make it a 0.5 centimeter. That should keep the Z fighting off as well. But that option is there for anything like that. Max group width. This is determining the actual width of the group. How wide can we go on these groups? This is all set to automatic depending on the size of the assets versus how many assets as well. So it's best to just leave this at 0. That makes it automatic. But if you have a very specific reason that you want the width to all of your groups to be a specific amount, feel free to put that value in there and it will abide by that. Row padding, we've gone over. The auto rotate for packing, we've gone over, but these are for globally when you're not using groups. Big item, new row threshold. This is for if you have larger items that are kind of fighting on rows, like it can't figure out if some of these, the way they're positioned are like this, and it's like, pick a row, one or the other. That is where big item new row threshold comes in, and it will do its best depending on your value you're putting here to either push it back or push it forward. Again, this seems to be a nice little default that I've kept it at, and it seems to work well. Force rotation mode. Everything should be, depending on the way you set up your meshes, and again, it's going to vary. If you created a mesh in your DCC or a prop, and you have it, looking good, facing forward, and then you make another prop, and you decided to turn it around but keep the pivot the same, well, then you might have some issues where some of these props are backwards. But for the most part, the default rotation is doing its best to set the face forward towards the front. But if it doesn't work out for you, or you're doing, again, you've done something different with your pivot points and such, you have different rotational directions you can go, like plus Y, minus Y. So if I change that, Control-Shift-R, you can see everything rotated. So maybe you want this, maybe you don't, but it's there if needed. But again, default no rotation is strongly advised, just to make sure everything, or as many props as possible or assets as possible, is facing forward like they're supposed to. Include skeletal meshes. Pretty straightforward. Check the box. Control-Shift-R. If you have any skeletal meshes in your project, they will drop right here. And you can see it tries to calculate the largest to smallest. I mean, these meshes are all about the same anyway. But yeah, if you need any skeletal meshes, if you want to add those are there. I do have it off by default because if you're doing an asset pack, you might not need the manis running around inside of your asset pack, your zoo. So we'll turn that off. And my last one here is spawn camera system. So we'll check that box and let's do a respawn here, a regenerate. So what this does is it is a spline based system here. You'll see it right here, asset zoo camera rig. It creates a spline component. As soon as the plane is stretched to what it needs to be to hold in all of the assets, this spline component will get the position on both sides and stretch the spline to match the edge. So it does not matter how big your pack is, the camera spline will always stretch on the plane as far as it needs to go. So as you can see here, when I click the camera, it's already positioned. It's kind of framed in right at the bottom of the plane. And if I come down right, oh, I think I had the spline clicked by accident. Okay, so if you highlight your camera rig, come down here to camera rig. Here is the first thing, camera position. This is a 0 to 1 movement system here that will go from point A to point B along the spline. So, and this is obviously exposed to sequences, so you can make a level sequence, pop this guy right into the level sequence, and then you can just key from 0 to 1 real slowly if you want, and you will see the group name, everything in there. So you have your camera offset Z. This moves it up and down depending on what it is you're working with, and again, if you accidentally bumped it, you can reset to default. Rail offset Y. If your parts are a lot smaller or a lot bigger, you can just offset your rail real quick, wherever you want it here. The starting position is just right where it's framed in. That's how I left it. Your camera pitch is obviously the pitch of your camera. Orient to rail. When you click this, the camera actually follows along the rail. This is for if you want to modify the spline and run it through your assets, run it, horizontally, whatever you want, you can orient to the rail if needed. And then lastly, use manual spline. Now this is all running in a construction script. So when you do use manual spline, now you have the ability, it ignores the A to B value, and then now you can go through and put in spline points and bend things around, arc it, make it go in a circle, whatever you want to do. Just you have to make sure use manual spline is checked. And that's it for the camera rig. So that is all of the settings in the plugin. The only other thing I do want to show is you can go to Tools, Asset Zoom Maker, and if you decide you hate all those settings and you hate all the groups and you want to start all over, or maybe you're using the same project to make multiple packs of some sort, and the next pack is going to be a completely different configuration, you can restore settings to defaults. The reason I put it here is because in project settings, there is no return to default system inside of project settings. Since this is all kind of talking to your INI files and it's kind of how you set up your project, you don't get the return to default. So the workaround is to put it in here. Now if I go ahead and click this, restore settings to default, and then I look in project settings, you'll see everything has been restored to default. So I hope this helps you in your environmental creating journeys, and hopefully this cuts some time down for you. And obviously reach out to me if there are any issues, or if you have some requests. I would love to hear some of your ideas, and for future updates, and we'll keep things going. Happy developing.